Hello everyone, today we're going to do another example on comparing fractions, and as we learned in class there are 5 ways or 5 methods that we can go through. The first thing we ask ourselves when we are trying to compare fractions is, did they give us a diagram? No, they did not, and so we shall move on to the next one. Do they have the same denominator? Nope. Let's go on. Do they have the same numerator? Nope. So let's try comparing to half. So I'm going to put that aside. Now, let's look at our first fraction and we're going to compare this to half. Like, what is equivalent to half which has a denominator of 4? Yes, if I have 4 pieces, half would be 2. Yes, if you didn't know that, you can just simply use multiplication to find out. Yes, so half is the same as 2/4. Now let's compare 3/4 and 2/4. 3/4 is bigger than 2/4. So this is more than half. So I'm going to write an M to remind myself. Let's move on to the next fraction. We have 5/6. Let's compare that to half. What is equivalent to half with a denominator of 6? So as you can see, we're going to multiply by 3. And on the top 2 times 3. And that would be 3/6. And so we're going to compare 5/6 and 3/6. 5/6 is bigger. Now when we have two fractions that are bigger than half, on our number line is going to look like they're both going to be on the right side of the number line. So 3/4 and 5/6, and I have no idea which one is bigger. So in effect, this method fails. If both are more than half or if both are less than half, that means I cannot use comparing to half to decide which fraction is bigger. So let me go on. Now if I cannot compare to half, I'm going to move on to the last method, which always works, which is equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions means that I'm going to try to make these two fractions have the same denominator. So let's try. I'm going to start with 3/4. And I'm going to write 5/6 there too. And I'm going to start listing out their equivalent fractions. Now 3/4, to find the first equivalent, we will multiply by 2 and multiply by 2. So 6 times 2 is 3 times 2 is 6, 4 times 2 is 8. That is the first equivalent. Yes, equivalent fractions have the same value, just a different name. And our second equivalent fractions multiplied by 3, multiplied by 3. 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 3 is 12. And I'm going to stop there, leaving some space if I still need to find more equivalent fractions later. Let's move on to 5/6. I'm going to list out all the equivalent fractions. The first one would be times 2 times 2. So 5 times 2 is 10, 6 times 2 is 12. And I'm going to stop because I see that I have a 12 denominator of 12 here and the denominator of 12 there. So I'm going to compare this fraction with that fraction. Now when they have the same denominator, means the pieces are the same size. So 10 pieces of 12 will be more than 9 pieces of 12. So this fraction is bigger. Yep. So I do not write 10/12 is bigger than 9/12. I would write 5/6 is bigger than 3/4 because the question is asking me between these two fractions. So I'm going to write it down. 5/6 is bigger. And this method is using equivalent fractions and finding the equivalent fractions that have the same common denominator, the same denominator.